that leads us up to our final spotlight for the day. I don't know where the time has gone, but it's really been a robust day today. So this final spotlight, as I had indicated earlier, is focusing on leveraging emerging digital payments to address digital and financial exclusion. I've got two speakers standing by, and again, I want to thank everyone who's participated with questions and comments. More of the same, especially with the speakers who have the hard job of taking us home. Might I ask you please to help me welcome very warmly Kagisho Dichabe, co-founder of the Fintech Association of South Africa. Kagisho, welcome. Let's give him a big round of applause. Thank you so much. And Brendan Pearce, Chief Executive Officer of the FinMark Trust. Let's give Brendan a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Kagisho, you are already in position, so I'm going to allow you to kick us off. Brendan, I'm going to invite you to take a seat. And again, ladies and gentlemen, we do 20 minutes or so, and then we'll listen to Brendan for about 20 minutes, and then we'll open up the conversation from here on. Over to you, Kagisho.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I audible? Yeah, very much so. Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, it's kind of difficult to come on stage after such a strong panel or discussions that we've seen recently. My name is Kagisho Dichabe from Fintech Association of South Africa. I'm the current chairman of the association. And today, I'm going to try to approach this thing differently. Typically, we'll talk about, obviously, the architecture and obviously financial inclusion, like you've heard from so many people. From my side today, I'm going to talk about Kasi architecture to financial inclusion. And again, taking a different step or different approach, because I do come from the townships, come from Mangaung in Bloemfontein, dusty streets of Bloemfontein. And growing up in the townships gives one's approach to financial inclusion differently. And I'm saying this because if you've never lived it, you will not understand it. I know it's a difficult one to appreciate, but if you have never lived it, you will not understand it. And I'm saying this because, well, again, given my background, from the township, did my engineering degree, went into banking. My first job was with Nedbank. We were modeling business processes, right? Actually, engineering. This is back in the days of TNO, technology and operations, just down the road. But my role was to go and build business processes for the tellers within the Nedbank group. Then there were People's Bank and PAM. Those that understand, I remember those days will know. So fast forward, got into business architecture, still within the financial services sector. And again, fast forward, obviously, I go back during holidays, I go back to Kasi, spend time with my Jida, sit at the corner, get, score Poko Koning, and, basically Kasi life. You would know if you know. And if you don't know, now you know. So, with that said, then as a business architect, and also coming from Kasi, then I thought, well, how do we marry these two? What is it that is lacking? Because obviously we spend a lot of time, banks, financial services, almost everyone talk about financial inclusion, right? We sitting in the high buildings here in Sandton, very nice aircons. But if you don't understand what is going on the ground, you can come with a very MBA models, very nice stuff, yeah? And consultants, again, I used to work for one of the consulting firms, the nice English, So I understand the Sandton, the consulting world, the banking world, I understand it. But what is important, you need to have lived it to understand it. Again, I'm going to get into it. I hope I get, from the onset, we understand about Kasi architecture. So I'm from Financial Fintech Association of South Africa, which is FINASA. We focus on advocating for the fintechs or the fintech ecosystem in South Africa and in the region. We're doing great jobs, as I like to believe. I guess that's one of the reasons why I'm standing here in front of you, because there is something good that we are doing as FINASA for the ecosystem. Our core sort of focus areas within payments, insurtech, lending, and cross-borders. That's basically, we're starting with those working groups first. Anyway, let me not waste too much time, ladies and gentlemen.
Just point it that way, Kagisho. There we go.
Thank you. So, on this one, basically, I'm not going to talk about the numbers. We have Brandon here from FinMark Trust. These guys are very good with the numbers. They do numbers, stats, surveys, all the types. I'm sure you've seen lots of their reports. So I'm not going to focus on the numbers because I'm going to leave the numbers to the number people. But for me, I think from financial inclusion point of view, we know South Africa has a high rate of the banked, so-called. But actually, not really. People saying that you have a higher rate of the banked, but reality is that there are a lot of we use banks or bank accounts as postbox. Yeah, here's the account, withdraw immediately. Why? They're going to steal my money. That's something that we know and we can relate to. And again, the rural and township communities remain largely underserved by traditional financial service providers. And with that said, there is a conception or misconception about that financial fees are extremely high. And obviously, there's also a challenge with financial literacy. A lot of our people don't really understand what financial literacy or financial services and products mean. And there's a lot of work that needs to happen within the literacy space. And primarily the financially excluded are the informal workers and low-income individuals. But it does not end there. There was, I think it was Pradeep who touched on it, something that is, I think it's an elephant in the room that we don't want to look at, but it is there. It's like, it's like there's an elephant in the room. Forget about it. There are a lot of foreigners, foreign nationals in South Africa, legally or illegally, that are financially excluded. Obviously, we all understand, well, I don't know if we do, but they are financially excluded. And I don't think that we are doing, at this point in time, we are doing a lot around the foreigners, legally or illegally. And also, one thing that is important to note is that the informal sector in South Africa is strongly driven by foreign individuals. If you look at your vendors, even kokas, spaza shops, majority of people who own spaza shops in South Africa are non-South Africans. I know, my friend, I get my things there sorted. There's bread needed, my friend is around the corner. My friend, who can explain what my friend or who my friend is? Okay, I'm not going to talk about my friend today, but anyway, they are my friends in kokas. And basically, they control, or not necessarily control, but they have a very, very strong, call it, influence in the township economy. I'm not going to talk about the numbers, but I understand it's in the, over 100 billion rands. I stand to be corrected. Like I said, I'm not talking numbers, but it's a huge economy that we are not doing anything about, or properly doing anything about. Anyway, going to I'm not going to talk much about this slide because I believe that most of us in here understand it, right? When you talk about financial services and products, basically the core revolve around this landscape. We have payments, we have typical banking, lending, wealth management, insurance, capital markets, small, medium businesses, and obviously real estate. So basically, at a high level, obviously there are a lot of sub-capabilities within this landscape. But we shouldn't look at it as it is, right? And if you double-click a little bit on it, and especially for Kokas, I know this slide might look busy, but actually it's about the way of life. Right? And we're saying the reason why I'm touching on it, you'll see that that landscape, we brought it back, the financial services landscape. But we're saying if you are from Kasi, there's a certain lifestyle that you live. And it's not in the book, it's not in those MBA classes or whatever classes that you attend or conferences like this, but you need to sit there to understand the lifestyle of Kasi. And also how movement of funds move within the township or townships. So it is, like I said, it's important to understand the way of life, and then basically you need to know who is who, Kokas. Who is married to who? What do they do for a living? Who are their children, and what do they do, those children as well? Which schools do they go to? And what do the kids use to go to school from transportation point of view? Yeah, who attends stock fair? And again, what type of stock fair? Is it Christmas, or is it lending, or mochodisano? There's different types of dynamics, different dynamics regarding financial services in the townships. And we say, well, most of the people in the townships are financially excluded. Actually, they are very, very included in their own way. Because life continues. More than 100 billion rands is circulating within the township. The only thing is that you don't have a view of it. And you want to, like everyone else, we want to taste it, we want to feel it, we want to be part of it, obviously. But they are included in their own way. The model is different, the architecture is different, hence the Kasi architecture. So if you understand how people live, the way of life in the townships, then you'll be able to get the vibes, as they put it, the young ones. They say, you need to understand, you understand it if you live it. So, the governor earlier on said that with that in mind, from the architecture, when you look at it multidimensionally, yes, there are all these capabilities that we need, right? But all of them, we need to have a safer, faster, cheaper, and more inclusive payment ecosystem, right? I'm going to touch on, I'm not going to go into each and every one of these, every block on the slide, but Kasi architecture incorporates this, basically the way of life, because I see we have 10 minutes, so I can talk the whole day on the topic. So I'm just going to give a summary version. But at a high level, one can go to Javas at the corner and start using QR code function to pay Javas. Javas does not need to have a bank account. And one thing for sure, Javas believes that that machine, that point of sale device, it's expensive. Because Javas is saying, okay, I'm going to pay every month for this point of sale device. After that, money will go into the account, and then they're going to charge me in that account and take money from me. Basically, Javas will do anything and everything in his power not to be part of that. But Javas also understand that life is moving. People are carrying cards, or they have watches to tap or phones to tap. He also understands that. But we need to, as a collective, we need to start saying what works better for Javas as a spaza shop owner, and what works better for Osmareya, who wants to buy fruits and vegetables from the corner, right? So, and not only that, what works better for Nkgono Sipati, that's Grandma Sipati for those, who has a charara, Jarara is that phone, the feature phones, yeah, and sweet sorry. Who has a Jarara but want to transact? I send my mother money back home. Can I do it now? Or can she request money from me? Forget about sending. Can she request money from me? 50 rands, I'm standing here talking to you, I see it comes through, yes, 50 rands, gone. Within 5 seconds. That's something convenience for the person who is transacting or even the recipient. Even though my mother is not on any digital, has a feature phone, how can she still go and use the money that I sent her to start operating? So again, financial inclusion, yeah, it's a very broad spectrum in the township from Kasi architecture point of view. And also, we talk about moving money or typical banking. I don't see a lot of, I know there are some MNOs that are pushing it at this point in time, and agency financial services, using Javas to withdraw 50 rands, using Javas to send money from. So the typical big building called, I guess that's why the branches are dwindling on a daily basis. But there is a different way we can start participating, especially for the rural areas. How do we take care of those people in our rural areas? But, stokvel, again, depends on the type of stokvel. We could do loans properly and intentionally. I know that we all know what stokvels are, right? But the how part, I think for me, that is one of the biggest challenges. We understand what it is, what it does, but how to implement it or how to enable it so that it's friendly to the Kasi people, for lack of a better word, those that we say that are financially excluded. How do we make it friendly to them, right? Talk about stokvels alone. We have loans there. We have crowd investments. For those that have been, I'm part of stokvel, by the way, so I do understand. And then also even home loan funding or even renovations through the stokvels. So there's multiple sort of multi-architecture within the bigger capability of Kasi architecture. And the reason why I'm saying that is that, okay, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but we need to understand and live. You need to be in the shoes of the people that you are trying to help to actually be able to help them. Yeah, like I said, 6 minutes. Yeah, I guess I can talk the whole day about the topic because I'm quite passionate about it. But again, the architecture continues here, ladies and gentlemen, and there are key drivers, though. Even though you'll see the high-level capabilities that we had just touched on, from earning income, QR codes, and SME funding, crowd investment, stokvels, and all of that. And you'll see the greener part where the financial services segments are. It follows the key financial services capabilities that are offered by the financial services. But I think what is important, especially for today's conversation, and also looking at the time, is the key drivers that are on your right? And there, what we are looking at is, I think I'm not going to repeat every word that most of us touched today, or most of the previous speakers touched on, but the likes of interoperability. That is key, right? That is extremely important. Can you use the QR code from service provider A and go to Pick and pay with the same QR code, and then go to ShopRite, do the same thing, and go to Javas and still pay using the very same QR code function. I know that there are discussions. I know Melanie and team doing great work there. We've consulted multiple times within the PEM space regarding some of these. And also even the Stimela team as well, doing great work in that space as well. So for me, it's about, we need to make sure that from interoperability point of view, whether it's QR code, whatever it is, that we can start with one. We said that you can't eat an elephant at once, or you have to bite by. So in an agile approach, for lack of a better word. So start with one, activated, high impactful capability from interoperability point of view. Let's get QR code in, if it's possible, as soon as possible, Melanie. Yeah, I think it will have a huge impact on the ecosystem and actually South Africa inclusivity at large. And then the regulation, obviously, I just mentioned payment ecosystem modernization, obviously the digital payment roadmap, Stimela, and then something that, again, is very sensitive, but I think it's important to talk about, the pre-funded settlement account. We need to open up financial services at large. I know that this one, that's just one of the things that we strongly need to start engaging on. And Bratim, a few weeks or months ago, he said something that I found very profound and strong. He said the train has left. Those that were at the launch would remember. And the reason for that, that's a very strong statement. The train has left. We need to, all of us collectively, we need to take payments to another level. And that talks about collaboration between the regulators, the Fintechs, or non-banks for that matter, and including the banks as well. So there's a great work that I know one of the banks is doing to say that they starting to reimagine themselves and say, well, then where to from here? As part of collaboration, saying, well, we are a mall. Yeah, we as a bank, we are a mall that provides financial services capabilities to those that want to consume them, whether through APIs or whatever it is. We are a mall, you can come and rent space in our mall. You, Mr. Fintech. And then you can go and start clicking, double click, KYC, bless you, click. Loans, click. And then you have these capabilities, meaning you can go quicker to market and service our underserved quicker. So there's a role for everyone, all the participants, all the stakeholders, from fintechs, regulators, and also the banks. And then again, talking about foreigners, which is very, very important. As I mentioned that, one of the challenges regarding foreigners and in South Africa is identifying themselves. I think Pradeep went, double-clicked a little bit there and spent quite a lot of time, defining the issues around foreigners and about their identity. How do we start, being able to identify the foreigners, especially from digital financial ID point of view? It will not only be, or recommended that it shouldn't only be for the South Africans, but also for the foreign nationals, whether legally or illegally in South Africa. I'm not going to go too much into each and every one of these items, ladies and gentlemen, but I just want to touch on one of the use cases that we are looking at, which is actually, it's in collaboration with the FinMark Trust. And I know that the SAB is also endorsed by the SAB, and also with the Swiss Confederation State Secretariat of Economic Affairs. So basically what we're doing there with the SAB, with this project, is to say the car guards, right? the waitrons, the petrol attendants, barbers and hairdressers, vendors, waste collectors, all these people that we call them the service workers. How do we collaborate and actually make sure that we provide digital sort of services to them and for them? Basically, from tipping point of view, how do they get tips digitally? Because every time you go to a shopping center, you push your card there, but when you get to, afterwards, we always, I don't know why we always do this. Say, and I'll see you next time, because we don't carry cash anymore. But just to show appreciation, we always research, But what we're doing here is to say that, okay, how can we start bringing in tipping in the fold as well? So, ladies and gentlemen, I think digital exclusion leads to financial exclusion. If you don't have a phone that does not have network or using data that is expensive, you will not want to use your phone to transact, because it's going to cost you more money than you had planned.
Yeah.
So I think on the slide, that's what there you go. Yeah, what I just said, digital exclusion leads to financial exclusion. And I think that goes without a say. And there are possible other avenues that, as a collective, we can start participating in, from investment from the private sectors to government support, and obviously digital literacy. Digital and financial literacy plays a major role in making sure that financial inclusion is embarked on in South Africa. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Matome for now. That is Matome, by the way. Yeah, he's based on Dainfen. He's a car guard at Dainfen, and he takes QR codes for tips as well. And one other project that I want to talk about quickly. 1 minute.
Yeah.
Something that we call Tech. This one is close to my heart, ladies and gentlemen. It's a program that is driven within FINASA. We're saying that, remember, talking about Kasi architecture, how many of the Leratos of this world, who stays in the back room and understands the need of her people in the township, but would build a platform, a fintech platform, but has a challenge with actually regulatory requirements. Because Lerato, trying to get through to this bunch of us here is difficult. Imagine Lerato in Soweto trying to run a fintech. Firstly, a license. For her to get a license, it's a mission. For her to understand the regulatory requirements, it's almost not impossible. She will fail before she even starts. But with Tech, it's a program within FINASA where we're saying that we want to partner or bring on board fintechs from the townships, and where we give them support, advice, guidance, and obviously review their outputs. But most importantly, we take them through training. You'll see there on the left where financial management, project management, especially regulatory requirements. But most importantly is the networking that we want to link Lerato to. As FINASA, we have lots of members, blessed, because of they understand our costs and why we do what we do. But most importantly, we need to link Lerato to the Lesaka of this world, right? We need to link them to the call them big techs, those that are members, our paying members, to say that, well, Lerato actually understands and knows what the need is. Partner with her and build or assist her to grow as a fintech. Anyway, so anyone interested, Tech, FINASA is here to to partner with you. My last word, and those that know me, is that I will not rest until I've achieved my purpose of ensuring financial inclusion and literacy for our people and their businesses in my lifetime. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Kagisho. Thank you so much. And so, ladies and gentlemen, again, inviting you to, pop on your microphones for questions and comments. We'll take them after Brendan's presentation. And Kagisho, thank you very much for taking us back, for many of us, taking us back home and reminding us of the bigger why and the bigger purpose. So, Brendan, over to you. Let's give you time on the clock, please, team, and we'll take it from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is truly the graveyard shift. I think I must have a chat with Mavis about why she does this, and then she lets me come after Kagisho. This is a difficult act to follow. I know the graveyard shift means you have one eye on your watch, deciding when you can sneak out to pick up your kids or avoid the traffic. So I'm going to help you by summarizing key points before I launch into all of the data that Kagisho has now said I must do. But so I'm from FinMark Trust. FinMark Trust is a market facilitator, and our mission is to make financial markets work for the poor in South Africa and in the SADC region, and of course we do our research globally. So you may know the FinScope surveys, FinScope Consumer MSME, those are the most popular products. So given that we love financial inclusion, I thought I should take some liberties and maybe talk a little bit about financial inclusion as an intervention. I know financial inclusion, there are views that financial inclusion, we haven't achieved financial inclusion in South Africa. I've heard it said in a few different forums. I have a different view. I think financial inclusion has been an evolution from the 70s through to the 2000s, where the focus primarily was on microcredit. That was initially what the focus was. And the next evolution was recognizing that people have different financial needs other than credit. So your savings, your payments, your insurance, your credit, all of those things. And that's how we kind of still sitting with that concept of financial inclusion. And the evolution of it has been globally, we need to get access first, and then we proceed to usage. Access has been huge globally. There's only about 1.4 billion people that don't have access at the moment. But the usage of these accounts, whether it's bank accounts, whether it is mobile money accounts, is low. And so the focus that we need to have now is on usage and how do we increase that usage. So it's not time to slit our wrists. I think it's a logical evolution of financial inclusion that we're sitting in. And so although so many people have had access to financial services, it hasn't impacted positively on their lives. Inequality is growing, unemployment is growing, poverty is growing. That tells us a few things. It tells us that we need to rethink financial inclusion. Firstly, we should move away from saying financial inclusion is the panacea of all ills. And financial inclusion on its own can solve poverty, unemployment. It can't do that. And I think if we begin to appreciate that it should be a contributor rather than an end in itself, I think we'll be able to put into context what's happening with financial inclusion in South Africa. So I just wanted to say that at FinMark Trust, we are, together with our partners globally, are looking at the next evolution of financial inclusion. And we're looking at how financial inclusion contributes more directly to people's livelihoods How does it improve their incomes? How does it improve their access to basic services? How does it improve them getting a job or starting or growing a business? And we're calling that financial inclusion 2.0. But it's much more difficult to measure, much harder. We're not interested in how many bank accounts we have or mobile money accounts. We're interested in what does this financial inclusion mean to Javas? Does it improve Java's life? Does it make him poorer? In many cases, it makes him poorer. We have to admit that. The problems with aspects of financial inclusion that have been negative in South Africa, over-indebtedness is a huge problem. You could say we opened up access to credit. That's one of the financial inclusion products, but we're now sitting with the problem of huge over-indebtedness. We constantly drive the products, financial products that we have, like my favorite topic, funeral and funeral insurance. That as South Africans, we spend more than 15 billion rand a year on funerals, and it's growing. Those are negative aspects of financial inclusion, and they make Javas poorer, because Javas, when he buries, he cashes in his policy, he cashes in his funeral informal savings group, and he borrows money to bury and goes into debt. Those are negative aspects of financial inclusion, and so the approach we're taking is a much stronger demand-side approach to it, and asking, does this make people's lives better or not? So, sorry, that was a bit of a detour, and now I've lost 3 minutes. You'll bear with me. So I said I'm going to do you a favor, the ones that are checking their watches to get to the kids and to beat the traffic. The key takeaways from my presentation before I go into the data that Kagisho now said. There was a movie a few years ago, Hollywood movie, maybe longer than a few years. But one of the catchphrases was, "Build it, let's build it and they will come." I don't know if you remember that movie. I think it was a baseball movie or something like that. We see that quite a lot in products, services that we've seen in South Africa and globally, where we take a supply-side approach. We have a nice shiny things, and often it's these techie guys that develop the product and then look for a solution, look for a problem to solve afterwards. I think we need to take a much stronger demand-side approach to enabling and expanding digital services to particularly township and rural areas. It's much more difficult, but we have to understand people's needs, their context, and Kagisho talked a lot about that. So you can build it, but they may not come. It's going to be a very costly exercise. I think the South African, in the history of the financial landscape, we've seen many that have failed. I'll say one, M-Pesa. I hope there's no Vodacom people in the house. They were my previous employers as well. But over 10 years, and I won't mention the amount of money that went into it. It's failed. They had to close it down. The yellow mobile operator went the same way, if you recall. Those are expensive learnings and exercises that should make us think twice about not taking a much stronger demand-side approach to it. We need to address the market in a segmented way. There's no one-size-fits-all. We have different needs from different constituencies that we have. And the more we segment this market and understand their needs, I think the better we will be able to target those products. By the way, the poor need choices for products and services they use, in as much as the rich want choices. The poor need choices as well. Yeah. So that segmentation is a critical issue. And of course, if you want data, we can sell it to you, and I'm sure you'll be fine. So in each of those segments, you need to understand the awareness, the level of digital financial education, the issues around pricing and cost, connectivity issues, and of course, how to change attitudes and behavior. those segments need to be understood in that way separately. We need to take an ecosystem approach. I think often we go in with one intervention without taking into account what the ecosystem does and how people live their lives and what the drivers of cash is. I'll talk a bit about the projects that we are piloting to understand this better. And of course, talking about pilots, we need to learn and experiment more in South Africa. We talk about sandboxes and all of that, but learning, experimenting, coming back, looking at what's not working in a way that we do it and we learn together is, I think, part of what we need to be doing. I'll talk about migrant-owned businesses. I'm glad Kagisho opened that door for me because it's an elephant we can't afford to ignore anymore because of the huge impact that migrant-owned businesses have in particular our township areas. So now you can, those that are watching their watches, you're free to leave. Sorry, I can't see this. So my approach to the topic is to look at what are the conditions and preconditions that need to exist for digital services and digital payments in particular to be adopted in more. I said the need for the ecosystem approach, the segmentation issue, I won't repeat that. And then I'm going to go into what does the data tell us. What is the data telling us? And I'm going to use data nationally representative surveys, FinScope, consumer and small business, and then talk to some of the data that's coming out of the 2 pilot sites that we are working on. So that's the approach to the topic. As a market facilitator, we use a market system development approach to our work. So this is what we call in our practice the donut. And it looks at the supporting environment on the top and then also looks at the rules and the systems, formal and informal, that impact on the supply and demand. I won't talk too much about that, but it's saying when you talk about an ecosystem, you need to look at the whole ecosystem and not just one area. And we're certainly understanding that from the 2 pilots that we're running. So what's the data telling us? Firstly, this is from the consumer side. Really, I didn't take a lot from it, just 1 or 2 key points that are relevant to what we, what we need to achieve. And as I say, we'll sell you the data if you are interested as well. So this is just one data point that illustrates the level of desperation that consumers in South Africa are under. 40% of South Africans borrow money every month to buy food. What this means is that those consumer budgets are very tight. So price becomes a key issue and consideration for how people spend their money. Just looking at the history of digitization and digital payments in South Africa, this is what we came out. This is Consumer 2023, and we took we've been doing FinScope for more than 20 years in South Africa, so we have 20 years of data to look at. But you can see in 2023, government grants, it moved from 37%, 10 million, to 68%, 30 million receiving grants. Most of that was initially paid in cash. The only bank payments, digital payments that were made at the time were mostly people that were formally employed through the banks. You can see the informal sector at the bottom was predominantly cash. That picture has changed dramatically in 2023, in that all of those government grant payments, so the SASSA payments, and this is again, I think, a success of financial inclusion, is that all of the, I'm not sure what it is now, upwards of 20 million grant recipients all receive their grants digitally every month. That's a huge achievement. Money that people transfer, also digital bank, of course. The remaining that is still cash-based is that informal sector. Now, this is huge because we've moved hugely over the last 20 years. Most people receive their money digitally, but they spend the money in cash. 94% cash usage. So although we have it, which is an important first step, you have a store of value now that you can then use. But our challenge is still huge. And as Kagisho was saying, 37% of people still draw the money every month. As soon as it hits the account, they draw it. For SASSA grant beneficiaries, that figure is much higher. This is a national figure, much higher than the national average. That represents 10.4 million people drawing money once a month. He said, I'm going to give the data, the detail. There it is. So South Africa we have two countries in one, two worlds. I think our previous president, Thabo Mbeki, was saying we have a first and a third world in one country. And as you can see, as digital payments, the urbanized workers and rural poor, and these are mostly people in townships, are the ones that are driving cash usage. So their use of merchant payments is still very low, and where the challenge sits at the moment, it's not in the first world of South Africa, it's in the third world. So that was on the consumer side. The next few slides are on the MSME side. Geez, is that how much time I have left? Okay, I'll move faster. This slide just talks to the size of the MSME sector. And as you can see, township economy contributes in the region of 2.4 trillion every year, and the rural economy 256 billion. These are small businesses. Remember, most of our small businesses are micro businesses, and you can see the contribution to the workforce. So an impact of digitization on this sector will be huge if it's beneficial to the businesses and not to the ones driving the products. I'm not going to talk to this slide. I think it's in the wrong place. So some of the key factors when thinking about digitization is the level of formalization of small businesses. And as you can see, informal SMMEs are the hugest, the largest percentage there. 1.6 million informal MSMEs. You only have 837 that are formally registered, meaning SAP-SARS registration. Semi-formal is 475. Semi-formal means they are registered locally, not with SARS or SIPs, but they are locally registered. But the vast amount are informal businesses, and most of them are the micro businesses. So if you want to digitize payments, this is what you need to be dealing with. And as you see from the pilots, the likelihood of accepting digital payments are those that are more banked and more formal rather than the informal. So this is also just a slide looking at over that period, the changes from the last study we did in 2020 and this one, the prevalence of cash and the changes. There's a slight decline in the use of cash and slightly an increase in the use of digital payments. There's an increase from 35% on using digital media, which is also important. I have 4 minutes. I'm going to move a lot quicker through this. So this slide just talks to the fourth industrial revolution and the preparedness. And as you can see, businesses that are not doing anything to adapt, 55% of them, using digital payments, 12%, and so on. So these businesses, this is not even, it's not in their universe or horizon at the moment. This slide that I pulled out just indicates, as I said, there's a correlation between those that are banked and those that accept digital payments. What this slide tells us is, although we have huge uptake of bank accounts, even within MSMEs, if you can see the graph, the micro businesses on the right, they have 62% of them, of those businesses, have a bank account in their personal names, not in the business name. And this is another key trend that happens that we will need to take into account. I've got 2 minutes left. This is just the same thing, and you can see 53% of businesses are banking in their personal accounts, not in their business accounts. Could SMEs pivot easily and leverage technology? I think the cell phone penetration has been talked about quite a lot. In terms of business records, we have that we have that breakdown as well. Those that are keeping business records and manual systems, you can see 42% are still using manual systems. This business support may not sound relevant, but if you look at the 20% of businesses owners have received support, only 20% in the last year have received support, business development support. And if you look at the support they received, none of those are focused on digital, taking up digital tools, which is a huge problem for the business support. How do you get people to understand digital the advantages if they are not getting the kind of support that they need? MSME owners dipping into reward programs. As you can see, quite a lot of reward programs coming up. This is an important one for digital payments, because often small businesses, part of the incentive is the value-added services that they have to increase income. So just very briefly, because I've got a minute left, we've started pilot programs, as Kagisho was saying, with Reserve Bank funded by SECO. We have 2 pilot sites that we are rolling out in, one in Tembisa, one in Hammanskraal. And the idea is to develop a proof of concept that we can roll out more nationally, and taking that ecosystem approach. The project is supported by World Bank is a partner in that program, and SECO provides the funding for it. I'll have to move quickly through these. You'll give me a few more minutes. This is stuck.
Okay,
Yeah.
Go for it.
So this is the data we get from those 2 sites. So what I presented earlier was national data. This is from the 2 sites. 58% of them, and this is a survey that we did about 1,000 small businesses in those 2 sites. 58% use cash to pay suppliers, and that's that value chain that they have. In Tembisa, it's higher, 72% are paying their suppliers in cash. When we went into this, we thought Hammanskraal is a bit of a peri-urban, semi-urban, and Tembisa will have much better results. But actually, it's the other way around. And so that just proves the point about the need to go local and really understand people's context and not make the assumptions that we make. These are some of the perceptions that came out around digital payments and the main barriers for enterprises to accept electronic payments. Cost comes out quite a lot. Customers prefer to use cash, security or frauds, and you go down the line. The issues of cost come up from both consumers as well as from small businesses. Again, this is just the around how many of them accept electronic payments. So 60% So this is the correlation, and we're trying to understand what are the requirements and what businesses adopt electronic payments. And you can see those that are registered in the blue. The registered ones accept, more of them accept payments. The ones that have electricity accept more payments. The ones that have a POS device or don't have it, the more they have smartphones, the higher the electronic payments. These are all factors that we need to take into account when going into the space. Again, this is from some qualitative work that was done in these sites. The issue of migrant-owned businesses is a big one, and what we're seeing is that migrant-owned businesses have much less formality, much less bank account ownership, and are basically being ignored in this process. And our data tells us township businesses, migrant-owned businesses make up around 35% of township businesses. This is not an insignificant number, and if we take an ecosystem approach, we need to include them, or else you'll have certain sections that offer digital payments and others that don't. And when consumers are confused by this, the likelihood of staying with cash payments is high. And I think we need to start dealing with it decisively. POS device ownership is moderate. In those two sites, there are POS ownerships. So in Tembisa, in the pilot sites that we have, it's around 45% across the two. Although they have POS devices, the usage of those devices is very low. And we need to understand why that is the case. And I think they may have been offered something nice by the providers of the POS devices to take them up, and then once what they were given is finished, they don't use it, or they use it as an exception when someone really doesn't have cash. They don't look to use it in this way. On the consumer side, again, bank account ownership is high, but low for migrants. Again, access to POS devices is low to moderate. Access to phones is high. The FSP footprint is low. So finally, key considerations, as I say, address the market on a segmented basis. One size fits all doesn't help. We've had disasters. I'm glad to hear from the BankServe CEO that PayShop transactions are climbing. Again, in the two sites we're in, nobody knew about PayShop. And so, that was a bit concerning. But also, I think from PayShop, the person-to-business payment aspect of PayShop will be critical for us to do this. And it needs to come on stream. Understand people's daily lives, promote financial and digital literacy, encourage community support and participation. And of course, importantly, when we put a POS device or whatever device in people's hands, in a business's hand, they need support. We can't go give it to them and leave them. The first problem they have, and nobody comes back to say, solve it in this way, they'll give up, put it in the drawer, and transact in cash. Thank you very much. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brendan. And your slide that was frozen for an extra 5 minutes, we'll take it. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I don't want to rob the gentleman here on stage with me an opportunity to engage you. I can see Zinhle standing by, flashing on my screen with a question. I'm keen to hear, maybe to pick up one or two more as well. I'm also open to taking comments as long as they're short, sharp, concise, and to the point. So Zinhle, let's start off with you. I can see your microphone's on. Please go for it.
Thank you so much. I'm very much, the Kasi architecture conversation was quite interesting. And I think of my questions, certain points have been touched on, but I'm going to refer this specifically to the Kasi space, Kagisho. So I just wanted to find out, does financial literacy which obviously fosters confidence to participate in the payments ecosystem, does it impede financial inclusion in the Kasi space? And just further to that, from your observations or your work within that space, do you find that, you know, the lack of financial literacy, is it perhaps a culture issue?
All right, thank you so much, Zintle. So we'll come back to that question, Kagisho. So financial literacy, is it standing in the way of financial inclusion? And are there roots in culture? And I'd be explicit and say in Black or African culture, because that's the predominant population in the townships. Okay, let's see. The team is giving me the number now. If you can go ahead in the meantime, if I haven't spotted you. Okay, 44, go for it.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. I think so I don't know whether it's a question or a comment, but so the issue is that we are really, which is very good, fast transacting, financial inclusion, reducing the cost is very, very important. But I think the other element that maybe you need to comment on, that is, I think, is we need to add on this aspect is the issue of safer. Because that issue, if we neglect it, there's going to be a very unintended consequences. So there are a lot of, I'm from the village, so there are a lot of people that are now afraid because they're losing money to touch these digital things. So there must be a way that as we progress towards digitalization and moving faster, also have the same vigor ensuring that we are also bringing the safer environment. Thank you.
So I missed your name, please? Charles, thank you very much. I've got you. He says, my name is, they call me Charles. Absolutely love it. I think I've got a question at table 28. If you're at table 28, please go ahead, sir.
It's ma'am, but thank you.
Sorry, I didn't see. I just saw the gentleman in front of you. Please go ahead.
It's Deline here. I'm actually the SME on the DFID team for the Reserve Bank. And my question is very much related to how do we promote consumer adoption of the digital financial identity in this region?
Thank you so much, Deline. So how do we promote consumer adoption? Okay, fantastic. And I think there was a microphone going there. That's the sir I was pointing to. Please go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, it's Kumaran from the Banking Association. Firstly, great kudos to the curators and organizers of the conference. It's very rare to see the theme of financial inclusion carried through all the way from the opening conversation from the SARB all the way into the comments being made at the moment. I do think I might have to come up to the stage and impose austerity measures on Kagisho for wearing a tracksuit, but we won't go there. Right? Great stuff. I'll get to my question in a second. Kagisho raised quite a number of important things, especially around the idea of design and in terms of understanding the consumer, understanding the market that it's building. Into this, and it didn't come across and it touches on the question that I'm going to ask, is that I'm going to make the assertion that there's also better business sense in terms of the businesses that are coming out of the Kasi economy. And that can be seen by the rise in the Kasi economy over the last 20, 30 years vis-a-vis the formal economy. So the question I want to ask to both Brendan and mostly to Brendan, but also to Kagisho as well, is the 2.4 trillion was mentioned.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, what type of what type of value are we talking about? Is that value that creates more value, or is it the type of value that's simply circulating around in the system? And I've had lots of statements saying the 2.4 trillion might not be a valid number. But Brendan, I'm curious if you've unpacked that deeper into value creation money versus value extraction money, or is it something that you guys are looking at? Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kumar. And I just want to make sure I've not missed anyone. else who's wanting to participate. Otherwise, we've got a healthy batch of questions. So thank you so much, Zinhle, Charles, Deline, and Kumaran. So let me start at the end, Brendan, because I think it's a clarity question that Kumaran's putting on. He says, if we look at this number that has been shared, 2.4 trillion, is this value generative or is it just circulatory?
Well, I think these are the numbers that come from this is a perception survey. It's a survey focused on small businesses and what their turnover is and how much they generate. These are small, mostly, I would say, small and micro businesses, which means the money that they're generating is circulating in the local economy.
Sure.
One of the serious problems that we have in South Africa is the lack of the ability to use the lack of the digital ecosystem in township areas means that the 200 billion rand that SASSA distributes into these areas every month, a lot of it is actually going out of that local economy, because people, their behavior is when they do swipe, they swipe in bigger shops outside of the township.
Yeah.
And they draw cash and they spend small amounts for small things, bread, milk, but their monthly groceries are being bought elsewhere. And a lot of that money is then taken out of that township.
Yeah.
So that's an important factor that we still want to look at, and it's part of what creating the digital ecosystems will mean, is that more of that money circulates and develops those kasi economies a lot more. That for us is the key, is a key concept. We have figures on how many people are employed by these businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't go into that now. Most of them are one-person owned ones, but there are those that employ more than 1, 2, or 3 people. And so, but those numbers are there as well.
So what I heard was also a question within the question, Kumaran, and I'd love to bring your voice in on this, Kagisho, because I suppose what I'm also hearing Kumaran asking is a comment on how the type of businesses that are coming out of the township Ekasi are evolving over time, and therefore their needs in terms of, payments and payment systems might be evolving as well. What's your comment on that, Kagisho?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are now.
Yeah. No, Kumaran is right. Okay, before I answer that, dude, I always wear suits. Today I'm representing a different culture. So, yeah, anyway, going back to, I think what is important for us is that we need to understand the real usage of cash, even going back to the capabilities that are required within GAS. And I strongly believe that we are far from reality.
Yeah.
So I'm sad to say, I'm sorry to say this, but most of us sitting in this room, we are not in touch with the reality of the township. So until you spend quality time to understand the true use cases within our townships, like from, even now, people are going to Facebook to trade on Facebook. There's e-commerce, but not our typical type of e-commerce that we know. People are selling products and services using different methods. So we need to go back to the roots. I think that's my answer.
So let me build on that response, please, Kagisho, because I think that Zinhle's question touches exactly on that. You're saying we need to go back to our roots, and one of the foundational pieces of roots is culture.
Absolutely.
And so her question is, one, is financial literacy or the lack of financial literacy impeding inclusion? And is this rooted in Black or African culture in your view?
As far as financial literacy and inclusion, absolutely, because you don't know what you don't know, right? You need to learn something to be able to do something about it.
Yeah.
So financial literacy is core to financial inclusion. And as far as culture is concerned, absolutely. I will never trust anyone who does not stay on my street.
That does not do what?
Stay on the same
Stay on the
street.
street, okay.
Most inside, right? Yeah, but I will trust my neighbor and the spaza shop owner, right? Even them, they will trust me to say, no, you are good for it. I can borrow you bread and milk. I know you're going to pay me back. And if you look at it, it's data that is created within communities. For example, that spaza shop, my friend, he knows that I go and buy bread and milk twice a week from them. And I come and say, hey, my friend, milk and bread there. He knows that I'm good for it. Actually, why? Because I buy there all the time.
Yeah.
And why is that? It's actually data that has been created. It's call them mini ecosystems.
Yeah.
Where we're saying that this area, yes, there are people, it's not physical data, but you're creating
It's like a
ecosystem.
relational data.
Absolutely. But if you look at it, it's a 2.4 trillion business.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a micro, but if you do it properly and strategically with linkages, you can go to a macro environment. So culture definitely plays a major role.
So final question to you, Brendan, and I want to bring Deline's and Charles's question together because I think there is a relation there. Charles is saying, can we bring the same vigor when we are looking at design features that are going to enhance safety? So it's something we'll talk about a little bit more deeply tomorrow, but relevant for this conversation as well. And Deline is saying, but what exactly how do we deepen adoption and consumer adoption? I'm bringing them together because I think the perception of safety might also be one of the things that are going to be important to consumers.
Yeah, sure. If I had another 10 minutes, we would have gone into this. But Charles, this is one of the key issues coming out of the research we're doing in Tembisa and Hammanskraal, the issue of trust to use it. And a lot of that trust is about safety and security of funding. By the way, there's another key driver of people taking their money out is because of an old policy at SASSA that because they're means tested, if you leave your money in your account, you don't need it, we'll take it back, right? So that's another thing that's come out, and it's a long time, but people still have this at the back of their minds. But the issue of data security and those issues around trust are key. In the interventions that we are going to do in those sites, the digital and financial education has a strong element of how do you protect your data, how do you protect your SIM card, your codes, all of those things. That's probably the strongest way for people to protect themselves is to be aware of this and to apply it. Of course, from the supply side, those measures, are going to be important. In terms of how you increase adoption, all of those interventions I've talked about, and for these we have about 5 of them, that focus on the community, looking at mobilizing the community to mobilizing SMMEs and to mobilizing consumers and to put it all together. Also, what we've found is that our townships are very organized. There are certain sectors that are very organized. So the taxi industry is very organized in our townships. In Hammanskraal, we'll be partnering with the Scholar Taxi Association. I was surprised. In Hammanskraal alone, one association has more than 1,000 minibus taxis transferring kids to school and back every day. They are keen to digitize because the issues of crime and all of that is there. And so we're finding these opportunities to spread. The other one is ECD centers, very organized. And if we can digitize the payments for those schools, we'll build a critical mass of users. And that's what you need. You can't only digitize one small space and the rest is left in cash. It's not going to be sustainable. So those are the interventions that we think will encourage consumers and small businesses to take it up. We could talk the whole afternoon about these things.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're not going to let you speak for the rest of the day. I think that was absolutely fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, can I please ask for a warm round of applause for Kagisho and Brendan. You can stay with me on stage, I'm going to ask you to bear with me just as I make a few announcements, and then we'll release everyone to cocktails. So the first thing that I want to say is a massive congratulations again to the organizing team. I think it's been said on a couple of occasions here on stage that the curation and the design behind the conversation has really been excellent. We've seen ourselves, it's 4:15. in Sandton, and by now, at least a third of the room would have made their way to Sandton City, and the tables look very, very full. So thank you very much for staying engaged, for leaning in, for bringing your voice into the conversation, of course, and that is credit to the team who've put a lot of thought into that. I also want to thank you for your participation today, and to ask the same of you tomorrow, that as we come in, we bring in the same vigor and the same energy, and we lead with questions, we lead with comments. If there is a special prize for Zintle, please, sub-team, can you please organize that for me? I'd really love for her to have that. Absolutely, absolutely fantastic. Again, the parking tickets, I've already said this, but if on your way out, if you are parked, just get a validated ticket at registration. Now, tomorrow, Deputy Governor Kasim is going to be our first speaker. And I don't want to take the thunder from what he'll be speaking about, because he's going to sit with the reflections coming out of the conversations today and play back to us what are the key messages that we're threading through into tomorrow's conversations. Remember that tomorrow we are turning our focus specifically on the questions of safety, security, and how do you do that while maintaining access, and how do we ensure that we're building a system that is reliable and sustainable over time. But having said that, I think it would be amiss for me not to share, in just about a minute and no more, some of the sound bites that I'll be taking home with me today. Cash is king, but the crown is slipping. Financial inclusion is bigger than all of us. This is a national imperative. There's lots to learn from other emerging markets. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. How do we drive inclusion while we operate from a place of exclusion? Is it possible that central banks can be both overseers and operators? Who is going to look after the consumer? If we think about Kasi architecture, the truth is the train has left. And my last one for today is, we need to stop believing that if we build it, they will come, because they just might not. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fantastic conversation. I will see you bright and early tomorrow. Thank you so much.